Hey, how's it going, guys? Today's topic, I want to discuss in full detail what should I do with my 401k when I retire. So I mainly want to cover two main areas, two main takeaways that when watching this video that you will have accomplished. Number one is what are all of your options when you are either nearing retirement or currently retired and you have this 401k account basically sitting there? What can you do? And then how to create an effective strategy that accomplishes your specific retirement goals based on what those options are. So simply put, what are your options? What are your 401k options when you do retire or when you're very close to that retirement date? And you could do one of three main things. Number one is you could leave it alone. Number two is you could cash those monies out. And number three is you could take those dollars and roll it over into an IRA or do conversions into Roth IRA accounts. So what happens when you leave it alone? Well, be mindful of what was occurring when you were contributing or growing this 401k account. The way on how this account, or think of it like a bucket, grew was by the contributions you were placing into that 401k, potentially the matching monies that were also being set up through your employer as an incentive to still be working for the company and be a loyal employee. What happens is if I'm putting dollars into my 401k and the employer is giving me a match, those are additional dollars that are going into that 401k account from the contribution side. So if you think of it ultimately like this bucket, one side is being dumped in there through contributions, which is a combination of your contributions and the employer contributions known as the match. And then the other side of the coin is, or how this account grows by the other side of the coin, is based on the rate of return, based on the investment options that you choose. So your different allocation options. So what typically happens is when somebody's working for a private institution and they're offered this 401k account, they're going to be receiving this employee benefits package. And it's going to say, okay, these are the different investment options that you could choose. You may have some aggressive funds. You may have some very conservative funds. You may have a fixed stable value fund. You may have a combination of a couple of other things in there. But ultimately, a rule of thumb is about 15 to 25 different investment options that an individual could choose. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It really just is based on the 401k provider and the plan that you got set up in. So what's important about that is, let's say if somebody was first starting out working at a long time horizon before they were going to hit that retirement date, they would typically be more aggressive earlier on because if the market's going to ebb and flow and you're noticing that the market goes down, well, you have a longer time horizon for the market to pick back up. So that's where individuals are typically more aggressive the further that they're out. And then as they start nearing retirement and they're about 10, 5, 2, 1 year out from retirement, they could go and become more conservative and say, okay, I want to make sure that I'm not taking any sort of volatility with this account. I want to make it, more conservative, so I'm getting more of that consistency in there, which is fine. So when we fast forward that somebody's trying to retire or they're hitting that ideal retirement date, that 401k account no longer is the employee working there. So that employee is no longer making contributions into the plan. If they're not making contributions into the plan, there's no matching money. So now that just tilts everything to one side of the coin, that rate of return side. If you're super aggressive and it's aggressively invested with the markets and different stocks and equities, and the stock market goes down, well, then your overall balance will be going down. If the stock market goes up, well, then your overall balance will be going up. So that rate of return could either be positive or could be negative. The downside to just leaving it alone is you're limited with those different funding options, those different investment options. So if you think of them like eggs in a basket, by leaving it in the 401k account, you'll only have about 15 to 25 different eggs in your basket to choose. There's only so much juice that you could squeeze from those individual eggs. So that's where an individual typically, rather than leave it alone, they say, well, now I'm eligible to utilize the outside mechanisms to customize what I truly want to do with these monies from a retirement standpoint, from either an income standpoint, an emergency standpoint, a growth standpoint, a tax standpoint, a death benefit maximization standpoint, whatever that individual's goal is. Now, because they no longer are working there, they hit that either retirement date or they were above age 59 and a half as an example. So there's certain get out options or certain get out qualifications. It allows them to take those dollars and now cherry pick. So as an example of leaving it alone, let's say somebody had a growth strategy If they left it alone, well, they're limited with the, that low quality, limited different investment options in there, as opposed to if they took it over on their own and maybe took those monies and rolled it over into an IRA and they still had that growth strategy. Instead of 15 to 25 different eggs in their basket to choose, with an IRA, you have thousands of different eggs to choose. You could create something that has, higher quality at a lower cost. You could create these different mechanisms within that IRA account that will really accomplish your retirement goals. So, be mindful of your options that are available. If you left it alone, all you'd be doing is just saying, okay, I'm somewhat familiarized with these investment options. I hope that this is going to perform well, and that could ultimately be a detriment. You could also, so that's the first option, is basically leaving it alone. Option number 2 is cashing those dollars out. Well, what happens anytime that you cash monies out of your 401k and you take it in the form of a withdrawal, or you withdraw the entire 401k and you dump that into your checking or savings account? Now, the way and how accounts are titled is you have either retirement related accounts such as qualified accounts, or you have non-retirement related accounts known as non-qualified accounts. So a checking savings account is a non-qualified account. A retirement account is a qualified account. So when you're taking qualified money and you're making it non-qualified, Uncle Sam, the government, is going to tax you on those dollars. So if somebody had $500,000 that was sitting in their 401k account, they say, oh, great, now I could just go and touch my money. By doing that, it's going to show as if they made an extra $500,000 of ordinary income for that tax year. So that could be a huge detriment, because that could jolt somebody into a much higher tax bracket, the highest tax bracket, than making them pay a higher marginal tax percentage on that overall bucket, as opposed to doing it in different sequences and systematic processes to make sure that if you want to create a withdrawal strategy, do an effective withdrawal strategy. Don't just cash out the full lump sum amount. So that's option number 2. And then option number 3 would be rolling over these monies and customizing these dollars. Remember, you're no longer working for the company. So you're no longer making contributions, you're no longer getting matching money, and that rate of return is determined by the different investment options, the limited investment options within your 401k account. Individuals could be very effective with leveraging these 401k accounts and rolling it over into an IRA or multiple IRAs that are customized for a specific purpose. What would that purpose be? What are some different ideas that an individual could get to really help accomplish what their retirement goal is? So once again, anybody watching this video, they're going to mean different things to different people, but just understand and fixate on the specific lanes that I'm speaking about that you may want to optimize for your own specific situation. So there are a few goals that an individual could leverage with their 401k account, with just their overall retirement plan, that could remove financial stress when you're creating these strategies properly. And the number one thing is income. If you don't have income in retirement, you don't have a retirement. So typically an individual is placing monies aside into their 401k account because they were trying to grow this bucket, make this bucket as fat as possible, so that when it comes time and they are no longer working, they're no longer bringing in that occupational paycheck. So now they have to rely on their savings and their retirement accounts to draw from to make sure that that money will last as long as they do, or them and their spouse do. So income is extremely important. A typical cash flow that an individual receives throughout retirement is Social Security income. That's one asset of cash flow. Another cash flow aspect could be pension plans. Another cash flow aspect could be rental income. Savings, such as 401k related savings. When somebody goes and they take their 401k, either leaving their 401k, they roll it out into an IRA, well, then they have to create some sort of withdrawal strategy to make sure that the combination of what their cash flows are, what their lifetime income amount is, what their steady income is throughout retirement is going to be greater than or equal to what their expenses are. If, let's say, somebody is not offered a pension, they don't have rental properties, and they only have Social Security income, which is a very common situation, to try to get somebody throughout their retirement years, what does that scenario look like? Well, an individual, let's say, is getting $40,000 per year from Social Security income. But after doing budgeting analysis, we understand that that individual needs $70,000 a year to live. If they're only getting $40,000 from Social Security income, they need to now pull $30,000 from their other assets, such as their 401k, their IRAs, their savings, checking, whatever that situation is, their non-qualified accounts, to make sure that they're closing up that gap. So what happens is you could be very effective when you take a 401k, you roll it over into an IRA, and then you make a customized IRA that's meant for a specific max income purpose. If someone's still trying to leverage a growth related mindset or a growth related strategy known as an accumulation strategy, when someone's working, they're accumulating their dollars. What happens is when somebody retires, they should have this mental shift to say, I no longer want to take on this risk. I now have to go from wealth accumulation to wealth preservation, preserve my wealth, and then do a proper distribution strategy. So when you create the customized IRAs that are set up for max distribution planning needs, what that allows you to do is use the smallest amount of dollars from your 401k and only as much as necessary to stick it into that specific customized IRA lane. Whatever you don't use for your income related needs, now you have left over to tackle emergency needs, which, let's say anywhere between 6 to 12 months of an individual's expenses should be set aside for an emergency need in case of an oh my gosh moment was to occur. Growth related needs. I want to make sure that I'm keeping pace with inflation, or I want to have account set aside that, anytime that the market does well, excellent, I could cash out some portions and spend it, pay for an extra trip, spend for a new membership, do a new fishing trip with my buddies, whatever that case is. There's so many different ways to ultimately skin that cat, but it's not something that has to be required expenses. It's more of those ancillary needs. And then lastly, taxes. Taxes are a huge problem, especially if individual has only accumulated dollars in qualified accounts, meaning monies that are pre-tax, that they're tax deferring, so that when it comes time to hit their ideal retirement date, any dollar that they pull out is going to be fully taxable. So there are opportunities that an individual could take their 401k account and do Roth conversions to take the monies from qualified into Roth IRA accounts. So that's taking it from a taxable end or a tax deferred end into a tax-free end. So there's different strategic areas on how to leverage that effectively. But just be mindful that as long as you're optimizing each lane, so you want to, if you have an income related goal because there's a gap there, you want to create a maximized income strategy. If you have an emergency goal, you want to make sure that you're placing that specific dollar amount in there that maybe is not going to be subject to any sort of risk, such as a fixed account, a money market account, whatever that case might be. So it has no market risk, related in there. A growth related strategy, you could now be more aggressive with those dollars. And then a tax related strategy, that would be creating systematic processes to take portions or all of your monies and convert those into Roth IRA accounts only if it's mathematically appropriate. So now that we understand what some of the options are when somebody, hits that retirement date and they have that 401k account, now what are some of the major problems with those options, which I've alluded to some of them. I basically touched on some of those. But the first kind of problem is individuals not taking advantage of the rollover opportunity. Once again, the reason why somebody would utilize a 401k or typically utilize a 401k is primarily for that matching money. When they were making contributions and the company was giving them some sort of percentage match, those were free monies that were going into that 401k bucket. If you're no longer working there, you're no longer contributing, you're no longer getting that free money. So now you're basically just handcuffed to limited investment options. If you have an income related need, well, why would you keep it in the 401k that just has these limited growth related investment options? If you have an emergency need, well, yeah, maybe you might want to keep a portion in there. If you have a decently, paying stable value fund in there, that might be an opportunity. Or you could go and take those monies out and be more flexible with an IRA that will give you more of that flexibility that you can cash out at any point in time. Making life a lot easier for you. If you have a growth related strategy, does it make more sense to be handcuffed and subject to limited funding options, limited investment options? Or does it make more mathematical sense to take those dollars and say, okay, I want to go and cherry pick a couple of these stocks, or I want to go and leverage these no load mutual funds or these high quality related accounts and have a nice portion of aggressive play versus conservative play and have a nice moderate portfolio blend in there. By having thousands of different options to choose from, that could really increase your growth related strategy and give you significantly more monies, in the future for when you may need that the most. So that's where, not taking advantage of the rollover opportunities, just saying, I'm just going to keep it in there because that's what I've done my whole life. And, I'm not going to create any sort of strategy. Taking advantage of the rollover opportunity could be very powerful and help an individual accomplish their needs. So the second large problem that an individual comes into contact with is placing too much money in the wrong area. And this is where individuals are fixated on that accumulation mindset and they don't know how to create that preservation and distribution strategy or shift over to that preservation and distribution mindset. So what I mean by that is an individual could still be trying to grow their money, but have their cake and eat it too, meaning, okay, I want to just keep everything aggressively invested and hopefully everything will essentially work out. And this is where you have problems that come into play known as reverse dollar cost averaging and also something known as the 4% rule. So what the 4% rule says is if somebody has a moderate portfolio blend, and let's say that they retire in their 60s, there's about a 90% probability if that individual is taking no more than 4% of their portfolio in the form of withdrawals that they should not be able to outlive their monies. First off, I have a problem with 90% because if you get on an airplane and a pilot comes on and says you have a 90% chance of us getting to this destination successfully, 10% chance of us burning and crashing in the hills, everyone's going to run for the doors. So different things that may make more mathematical sense in your mind would say, okay, how can I have a 100% chance of success? How could I make sure that I'm eliminating that sort of risk, that sort of sequence of returns risk, that I do not have to only withdraw 4% of my money? That means if you have a portfolio worth $1 million, the first year you should only be pulling out $40,000 of income from that, that specific portfolio. That could be basically peanuts based on what that individual's gap is that they have to accomplish from the combination of Social Security, pension, rental income, et cetera, versus what their necessary expenses are. So when somebody stays within that accumulation mindset, they may be subject to that 4% rule. Or if they take out too much money too quickly, that's now going to decrease their chances of success to not outlive that retirement bucket, that retirement savings. And this is where reverse dollar cost averaging can come into place. And what reverse dollar cost averaging means is that you're pulling money from an account that is bombarded with fees and also is subject to downward market risk. So what happens there is, let's say if an individual takes their money out of their IRA and they place it with different mutual funds with a financial advisor. Well, those mutual funds are going to have different expense ratios. They're going to have different fees associated with those mutual funds. The financial advisor is going to have a fee. So now those are two guarantees that are coming negatively against off of your account. So if you think of it like a bucket, you took your 401k, you rolled it over to your IRA bucket, there's two holes that are now coming out. If, let's say you're paying 1.5% in mutual fund related fees, and then you're paying another 1.5% in advisory related fees, those are 3% in fees that are already coming off of your account before there's any sort of growth in that account at all. Let alone if you pull out another 4%, now that's minus 7% from your overall portfolio. Granted, if the market is returning well and it's doing very well right when you retire, from a sequence of return standpoint, that could actually be a very good thing. But there's a big question mark because we don't know what the markets are going to do at a specific point in time. That's where it could be a large detriment because if, let's say, you're pulling out monies from this account, you're getting hit with fees, but then the market also takes a shift as small as a 10% drop. In that example, just all other things being equal, that's a minus 17% drop in your portfolio. If you ever look at average rates of return and you say, okay, I have a portfolio and I lose 50% one year and then I gain 50% the second year, your average rate of return is 0%. So in that example, if you minus 17, you say, oh, if I just gain 17, I'm going to be back up to break even. And that's not the case. Because let's say we put a number behind that average portfolio. And let's say you had a $100,000 portfolio and you lost 50% the first year, and then you gain 50% the second year, what is your remaining balance? Your remaining balance would be sitting at $75,000. It would have went from 100,000, lost 50, when it went down to 50,000, you would have gained 50% of 50,000 is only 25 grand, so therefore it would be sitting at 75,000. So even though on paper, it would show you had an average rate of return of 0%, in reality, you have a minus 25% loss. So that's where negatives could completely destroy portfolios, especially when you're trying to leverage them for retirement income planning needs and for some sort of peace of mind to say, I need to have the safety net sitting there to at least give me what I need for required expenses, to accomplish what my required expenses are. So when you go and you structure monies from 401ks and you roll them over into properly designed IRAs that now have systematic withdrawal strategies that could also provide some sort of longevity insurance of lifetime income guarantees for you and your spouse. Now what that does is it says instead of a 4% cash flow, you could have something as high as 8, 10, 12% cash flow opportunities off of some of those related accounts or some of those customized IRA accounts. So that's where, when doing that, you can now use 1/3 less into the proper IRA strategy than you were thinking of, okay, I'll just throw everything into a growth strategy and hope that everything's going to work itself out and I'll just take out 4%. So that's where when I say use the smallest dollars and only as much as necessary, if you're trying to max out an income related strategy, use the smallest dollars towards that, because when you use income strategies, it's going to limit your growth. If you use growth strategies, it's going to limit your income. So that's why you want to stick each to its specific lane, so that if you're using a growth strategy, you're maximizing at that growth. If you're using an income strategy, using the smallest dollars possible so that it's maximizing, it's getting you to that exact number that you have to hit for that income related need. It makes everything else work in tandem with one another. So like as an example, if somebody has $1 million portfolio, and instead of using the full $1 million towards one strategy, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to have customized IRA number one. It's going to require $300,000 with customized IRA number one that will accomplish my income strategy. It's going to require $50,000 in IRA number two to accomplish my emergency strategy. It's now going to require $650,000 remaining that now I could have in my growth, my inflation, my tax related strategy, my my inheritance maximization strategy, whatever that case is, in that step 3 bucket. So by segmenting each appropriately, it's going to give you that peace of mind. It's going to remove a lot of that financial stress of being like, oh, I hope the market does really well this year. I hope it does really well. I really need it to do well. You're never going to have that conversation if you do things the right way. So that's where placing too much money in the wrong area, it's going to cost you time, and it's going to cost you thousands of dollars in the process, and a huge headache, which could be devastation later on, especially if you bring on too much risk when you should not be susceptible to that much risk. Now, the third problem I essentially touched up on when I was explaining the second problem, but taking on too much risk for income growth strategy, you obviously want to make sure that your risk tolerance is in line with what you subconsciously feel. The older that somebody gets, obviously the closer that they are to death. So they have less time on their hands to be able to take advantage when the market goes down, to have the market pop back up. So these were individuals that, let's say, tried retiring around 2001, and then you had basically the lost decade that occurred from 2001 to 2011. And that was a large impact to their situation, because they were feeling the effects of the reverse dollar cost averaging, of the effects of pulling money from an account that could potentially go down, and ultimately sequence of returns risk during that time frame. So that was obviously a large problem. So you just want to make sure that everything's in line with what your risk tolerance is. There's many times that we deal with individuals and they say, oh no, I'm super aggressive. I love the market. I love the market. I love the market. And we use different artificial intelligence softwares that asks them the same question multiple times over. So when they answer that, and let's say their risk score comes back at a 12, when the market risk score is 75, say there's a problem here. There's a disconnect here. So that's where, to make sure that an individual is being set up properly, whether you're doing it on your own or you're asking for help along the way, make sure that you're always matching up that criteria. Whatever your risk tolerance is or your risk score, make sure to match it up with your portfolio. If you don't want to have any sort of risk towards your income related strategy, then make sure you're creating something that gives you no market risk towards that income strategy. If you want to leverage growth, but you say, hey, I kind of like the interest rate environment right now. So in my leftover monies, my growth related monies, I want to have a large portion taking advantage of fixed rates, and another, maybe smaller portion sitting into a highly aggressive, ETF strategy, whatever, that situation may be. So, or vice versa, maybe, you're super risk tolerant, and that makes more sense on your growth related needs to put a large portion of dollars towards an aggressive strategy, because that's subconsciously not going to hurt you whenever the market does drop, and you're only having a small sliver towards a fixed or fixed index related strategy. So there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. So I hope that makes sense. That's really step number 3, or problem number 3. And then problem number 4 is not accounting for taxes and conversion opportunities. What happens when you stop working, you're now hitting retirement, is you're going to have a shift in how the taxes work. You're no longer paying monies into Medicare, FICA taxes, but now you're receiving the monies that you are receiving. You're paying tax on ordinary income taxes. You're paying tax on capital gains, whether that be short-term capital gains, long-term capital gains. If, let's say, you're triggering Social Security, now you have Social Security income taxes that may come into effect. So there's something known as a provisional income calculation that takes a portion of half of your Social Security income, mixed with any sort of qualified dividends, mixed with any sort of distributions you're taking from IRA accounts, mixed with some non-taxable interest, and basically shoving it all into a calculation. And if you're above a specific threshold, then you could have up to 85% of your Social Security income could be taxed. which is completely sucks because you're placing monies into the system the whole time. You're now getting basically peanuts of what you've contributed into the Social Security system. And now the government's saying, okay, we're going to tax you on, could potentially be up to 85% of that benefit, could be taxed at your ordinary income tax rate. So that's where if there's any sort of conversion opportunities as you're nearing retirement or when you hit that ideal retirement date, but maybe you don't actually have to leverage your 401k for a withdrawal strategy, you can now take portions of those dollars and do Roth conversions, systematic Roth conversions to schedule those dollars out. So instead of taking a $500,000, let's say $500,000 was sitting in your 401k account, rather than do a full lump sum of $500,000 from your 401k, convert that into a Roth IRA and take that $500,000 tax hit right then, because when you do a conversion, that's when all the taxes have to be due. Maybe you might want to say, okay, well, let me stretch this out for the next 5 years and take 100,000 conversions for the next 5 years so that it's easing up your burden. Maybe you want to leverage 50,000 per year for the next 10 years. And so you're leaving those dollars in that 401k, or maybe you took it from the 401k, roll it over into an IRA, and then you're doing traditional IRA to Roth IRA conversions. So there's so many different ways to do that. But at the end of the day, the reason why somebody would be doing that is because they want monies growing more aggressively towards some sort of tax-free benefit, so that when they do liquidate those monies later on, they're now receiving that tax-free, which could also have a trickle-down effect on resulting in less provisional income and therefore having less Social Security income taxation. So you're able to keep more of your Social Security benefit. So everything kind of works in tandem with one another, but that's why you want to make sure that you're creating a proper strategy so you're not falling victim to the common landmines or the common problems that occur with individual situations. So some effective solutions for your 401k is rolling over specific portions to align to your goals. So as an example, if you roll over your 401k into an IRA and then you transfer that IRA into multiple IRAs that have specific lanes, that optimizes, accomplishing your goals. So you're using the smallest dollars only as much as necessary in each lane, knowing that it's going to be untouched. As an example, if you're leveraging an income-related strategy with an IRA account, you know that that's going to be used for max distributions, max withdrawal-related strategy, versus maybe a growth-related strategy is monies you just want to leave alone. So that's something you don't want to be touching constantly. So you're not messing with the compound interest factor in that growth-related strategy. So you want to make sure that you're rolling them over into specific portions, and then you're optimizing each lane to keep the most amount of money in your pocket, as opposed to just throwing it all over the place and trying to create a jack of all trades type strategy or no strategy at all. You want to make sure that each strategy is at least being effective in some way. The third would be using the smallest dollars for income and emergency, which I've already mentioned. The fourth, leveraging Roth conversions for tax-free growth and distributions throughout retirement, which I already mentioned. And then really the fifth is estate planning strategies to maximize inheritance. Some individuals have accumulated money in their 401k, but they're getting Social Security income. They have rental income. They have a max pension income. And they're like, you know what? I actually don't even need to touch these monies. Well, what happens when somebody doesn't touch their 401k account, it's going to constantly be growing tax deferred. Once you start getting into your 70s, and it was just changed for the longest time, it was 70 and a half, then it went to 72, now it's 73, you have something known as RMDs, required minimum distributions. What happens is the government forces you to start taking distributions from your 401k account. They want you taking distributions because you never paid tax on those monies. So any dollar that you take as a distribution is going to be fully taxable at your ordinary income tax rate. So that's where if somebody's saying, hey, I have this 401k account sitting here and I want to maximize an inheritance to my loved ones, to my beneficiaries, that's what the whole purpose of this was, but you're doing it in an inefficient tax way, that could be a large problem. So there's ways on how you could utilize that 401k, place into an IRA or multiple withdrawal strategies, and have that utilize it for some sort of maximized inheritance to give your beneficiaries tax-free monies later on. You could also utilize the 401k dollars for healthcare related needs, long-term care related needs. Something that Medicare doesn't cover would be long-term care. So there's kind of different ways that you could kill, three birds with one stone, such as, I want to make sure my healthcare is covered, my long-term care is covered, and also my inheritance maximization covered, and an additional growth-related strategy is covered by using different rollover opportunities for the 401k. So that is what's possible. And these different things, when you line them up the correct way, what does that do? That removes financial stress. When you have no financial stress, when you're no longer working, that allows you to enjoy retirement, absolutely love the process, and essentially eliminate deathbed regrets. And that's morbid to talk about, but something that I came into contact with. It was a very personalized situation where it just basically hit me between the eyes and saying, holy shit, if I go and I'm sitting on my deathbed, do I want to make sure that XYZ is covered? So that's why in a lot of my videos, I always mention that deathbed scenario. Obviously, when I start nearing retirement, I want to make sure that everything is covered up until that point so that I could walk off into the sunset. So everything I'm trying to talk to my clients or educate, through the different social media accounts is for an individual's benefit to say, okay, if I'm putting myself in that deathbed scenario, what exactly, what do I want to make sure was accomplished through my life? And it's not magic, it's just math. By figuring out what exactly that situation is and then backing up into the math and then leveraging the correct areas effectively, that's how you're able to do this without that stress and do it effectively, whether it's on your own or you're leveraging, an advisory group. And that brings me to the next point. If you found value in this video and you say, hey, Derek, I understand everything you mentioned. I would love to, do it myself, but I just am really terrified of learning this. And I'd rather leverage, you and your team and all your services. That's where you could set up a free 25-minute connection call where you give our 1-800 number a call. It's 1-800-566-1002. Or you would click on the calendar link that's embedded in the description of this video. And you could ask to speak directly with me or one of my other advisors. And based on your situation, we'll make sure to line up somebody, in the correct capacity. But I want to thank you very much for watching this video. Please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Retire Sharp, so you could have access to the most updated videos. Thanks so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed.